Welcome to Gorilla Sports Off Court, a post-game live reaction following the Denver Nuggets on the road taking on the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm Liv Moods. That is Brandon Krisztal, and this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American's salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. So head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save some money today.
Hello and welcome in.
Do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome in, everybody, to another Gorilla Sports Off Court, a post-game live reaction following the Denver Nuggets on the road taking on the Los Angeles Lakers without Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. BK, last time we saw this Nuggets team play without Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, they actually got a win against a pretty solid team in the Golden State Warriors and looked to be playing pretty great basketball. This one, however, started off very rocky. I will say, I expected the final score to be much worse than it was based on the way the game was trending. You and I were texting back and forth. BK is really good about texting me throughout games, basically with things that the Nuggets should be hearing, which is tighten up on defense when it comes to Luka. Less turnovers. We're going back and forth as if they can hear us, but I definitely think the frustrations we felt are probably felt across Nuggets Nation. So BK, let's dive into a little bit of the things that you saw early and then some of the things that they got better at in the second half, but ultimately why they let this game slip away.
Well, and I think they even got better at it later in the second quarter, but early they just let Luka Doncic show us why everyone's going
Luka.
crazy about this trade. And you know, well, we can get into some more conversation about the Lakers, but looking at the game specifically, Luka is a guy who can single-handedly win you games. He can get a team all the way to the NBA Finals in the right circumstance, like we saw a year ago. And so it's one of those opportunities for you to, like you did against the Warriors Monday night show, hey, we've got, a lot of defense, and even though we don't have Joker and Jamal, we're gonna take it to him. But Luka from the jump was just better than the Nuggets, and they're running numbers. He's got 16 points, the Nuggets have 14. He's got 20, the Nuggets have 16. And so we know they're the worst first quarter team in the league defensively, as Michael Malone has told us.
It was very clear tonight, wasn't it? My God.
And they showed it yet again. And so it's one of those things where you're like, man, this could get ugly quick. And that's what, you and I are texting each other. And so I give them credit to kind of dig into the game. And, they're down 14 at the half. You're like, okay, this is potentially manageable. But then there's always circumstances in games. They get a stop when they're down 17. They can cut it to 15 or 14. Instead, they don't. All of a sudden, they're down 20 on the other end.
Right.
But the score is not indicative of how much the Lakers won easily. Give credit to these guys.
Sure.
Hard all the way till the end, but you didn't have Luka out there anymore. You didn't have Austin Reeves. You didn't have Connect. And so the score looks more respectable. They were down 30 with 6.5 minutes to go in the fourth, give or take. And you're not going to come back from that, even if Jamal and Joker are on the floor. And so I think Monday you got an inspired effort. Tonight you got a team that was looking to right the ship after obviously having some struggles in recent games without LeBron in any of them and without Luka in a couple, or at least in one. And so you're going to continue to jockey, but their team is flawed. And so if the Nuggets get back on track, if I'm Michael Malone, though, and Jamal Murray and Joker aren't exactly where they need to be, I sit them Friday also. Nuggets fans don't want to hear that, but you're going to Portland. Yeah, they play hard for our buddy Chauncey Billups. He's gotten those young guys to play hard. You're starting to see Scoot Henderson kind of figure it out. But give him one more game to rest and take your chances. Let Aaron Gordon continue to, try to wear a Superman cape, and then get him all lubed up and ready to go Sunday against the Rockets in Houston. And then Monday you get the Bulls coming in, got a little revenge for them as well. We know that didn't go great against Washington. But so you knew this was going to be an uphill battle. It was, I guess, a credit for them keeping it close at times. But the Lakers, with the way Luka was playing, they just didn't have an answer for him.
Yeah, no, the defensive efforts in the first half were very, again, kind of just an accurate depiction of what we've seen all season long with this Nuggets team, which is just a lack of defensive effort early in the game. And then when it's time to turn it on, you've already allowed a Luka Doncic to get hot. And at that point, it's hard to come back from that. I will say this was a really great example of be careful what you say, media heads, because it is very clear that Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray are battling injury here. I don't think Jamal Murray, if there's any game on the schedule that he doesn't want to sit out of, it's against the Los Angeles Lakers, especially without LeBron James, where Jamal knows he's got a perfect opportunity to cook yet again. We know how elevated he plays against the Los Angeles Lakers. But to your point, I do think something that at this time of the year, you have to be very strategic about is how and when you use your players. And so we've had Aaron Gordon out for the majority of this season. It genuinely feels like we have not watched him play basketball at all this year. And when you look at the numbers, we really haven't seen him as much as we're used to seeing him. And so this is a great opportunity with no Jokic and no Jamal for Aaron Gordon to, like you said, wear the superhero cape and to not only that, but also get his body back into the style of play that he's used to playing, which is very physical and very aggressive. Two things that the Denver Nuggets desperately need, and it's very clear have missed without Aaron Gordon on the floor. But it's also good for Aaron Gordon to be in there playing tough, playing hard, and having to step up and be that leader to get his body back into a good rhythm. I will say one of the main reasons why I think this game, the final score wasn't an accurate reflection of how this game really felt to a Nuggets fan, because it did feel ugly. It did feel chaotic. What was it? Did they end with 19 turnovers? And, it's sad but true that doesn't even feel like a super large number. They turn the ball over what seems to be a little too frequently, this Denver Nuggets team, but one person on the floor that you can always count on, not really caring about what the score looks like. We could be getting blown out by 30 points, 40 points. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the same effort from Russell Westbrook. And I think having him out there stepping into that leadership role without Jokic and Jamal really keeps these young guys in a good rhythm of, regardless of the score, you get out here and you play tough. So in this loss, I think there's some positive things we can take away from this, BK. Believe it or not, Liv Mood's positive after a loss. It's like the world must be ending. Call the police. Something's going wrong. But some positives you can take away from this, BK, and I want to know your thoughts on this, is we're seeing some jersey numbers that we're not used to seeing playing for the Denver Nuggets out there, getting some good minutes. And I like what I see from our second unit. I think their effort, and especially on the defensive side, I think that they've got a lot of upside there. And I do think there's a lot you can take away from what our second unit has to offer. What do you take away from what the minutes we've been able to see from our second unit without Jokic and Jamal?
Well, I think it's going to be great for a guy like Jalen Pickett, who there were some question marks coming into the year based on what we saw at Summer League. And we always have to remind ourselves that Summer League is Summer League for a reason. And you've got some Summer League, legends that never make it in the league. And I don't know what Trey Alexander is going to be. We're going to find out. But Trey Alexander was awesome in Summer League, and Jalen Pickett looked like, he was still trying to find his game. But obviously, you have to give credit to the Nuggets coaching staff and personnel department for what they understand about who Jalen Pickett is. And so you're getting solid minutes from him when you may need him in the playoffs for whatever reason, foul trouble, an injury to Jamal or Russ or whatever it may be. And so I think that's a good thing. Obviously, Hunter Tyson played well on Monday, so you're going to see a little bit of him. You're going to continue to see more of Zeke, but the play and Peyton Watson, obviously, you need him to just play more and get healthy and just get more comfortable playing more basketball in his hometown. He had obviously a monster dunk right before the half. And he's always going to bring effort and defense. And so I think all of that is good. But the guy that I think we need to maybe be excited about, and you can't put too much on somebody, but
Jones?
We've seen, huh?
Were you going to say Jones?
No, Jones.
Oh.
No, Jones is, let's just wait and see on Jones. I think we've obviously seen some good things. No, it's Vlatko. That block he had. And we know that his body has failed him here in recent years. And some guys, in a sport or girls, but there's plenty of players we can chronicle across all sports that their body fails them and their career never gets to where it was supposed to. We don't really know what Vlatko's supposed to be. We know they like him and they've kept him around, and they've obviously let him start to work through or, continue to work back to health. So can he be a guy that, I don't say even cracks the rotation, but gets you just spot minutes, similar to what we saw? He's not the same player as Justin Holiday a year ago, but that type of guy that, hey, we need you in this game, so because the one thing that they need is just more effort, more defense, and Blatko's going to give you that, and he's going to knock down an open three. I think the more he plays.
Right.
So, I saw the note you got right there from Ninoslav, who says, "Wish we had started giving these guys minutes early in the season." They kind of did. It's just how do you distribute them? Because when everybody's
Right.
healthy, you can't play 12 guys. You're not going to.
Of course. And if you've got Jokic available, you're playing Jokic at the end of the day. I mean, that's
Right.
pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, I mean, this is a rare situation. I think I saw something pregame, and this kind of correlates to my rant the other day about it being a bad look for the league that Jokic and Jamal did not play against the Warriors. I saw something that Coach Malone said pregame where he said in the 10 years that Jokic has played, he's played the second most games. So he's very available often. He is not a player that sits out unless he absolutely has to.
Who do you think's the player that's played more? My
I don't
guess is
know.
it's probably only – this is just a guess. My only guess is it might be Russ. This is a guess.
That's a good guess, actually. You know
because
what?
Russ just doesn't miss games. We could probably figure this out here real quickly, but it's not LeBron. It's who else has even been around for the full 10 years that would qualify.
Steph?
That you'd think Steph, but we know Steph. I mean, Steph missed a whole half a season. So I think that I don't know, but I didn't want to slow you down. But let me do a little quick research while you to finish your point, because I know where you were headed with. Also, when we saw how many people, I mentioned as we were coming on, just you and I, because you know how much my fantasy championship means to me, because it's a difference of $500 to finish first or second, and that's real money.
Yes, it is.
$500 is cool, but 1,000 is cooler. And so
Somebody says this is maybe a guess. I'm not sure if it's
Jaylen Brown. No, we can do some quick research and see. I'm not great at math, but I can count, missed games.
I'm not either.
Uh,
I'm not great with quick math that's live
but
on air.
21 guys, to finish out my point, SGA being one of them. Jalen Williams still banged up. We could go down the list. So Steph last night, obviously LeBron's dealing with the groin, but 21, 22 stars over the last couple of days have missed games. And this is going to be a trend here for the next 3 weeks.
Well, here's the deal, BK. This has been a conversation that's existed for quite some time. Do these athletes play too many basketball games in a season? Because
No.
let's consider all things here. Yes, I get it. 82 games, it's just how it is. This is the job they sign up for. I get all that. But we also don't consider, and we do consider it, but you add the element of travel. You add this new in-season tournament now where I think if you make the finals, you get a little less rest. You add the players that are playing in the All-Star game, so they don't really get that week off. You add the Olympics in there, which took place this most recent summer. There's a lot of things these athletes do where you really look at it and you go, there's not much of an off season that exists, especially this most recent off season, because so many of these NBA players were representing their countries playing in the Olympics, which is the highest honor, and I would expect them to do that. But listen, covering 82 games feels like a lot. Now, playing 82 games, I know certainly has to feel like a lot. There have been many conversations entertained by fans across the world in regards to the NBA. Is it too many games? Is 82 games too many? Because that's not even considering a team that makes it all the way and goes to the playoffs. Do you feel like, BK, it's too long of a season for these guys? I mean, like you said, we're seeing their bodies just take a beating. They're broken down. They play a lot. Is it too many? Is 82 too many?
It's not. And the reason why is we know what the excitement is. If you want to talk about when the when the season begins, and the argument that, start a little later, end a little later, the TV contracts are such, especially with the new ones coming, that you could probably still charge that number knowing what live sporting events do. But everything has kind of been calibrated on an 82 game season. So could you drop it to 75? You could, but you're not going to. Part of it is you want to see stars, and I get that, but you're also trying to develop these young guys. And there's a reason that you don't just play 7 players on a team, that you carry 17 on a roster. It's so that everybody does play. It's just that you're going to play when you're healthy. And then down the stretch, you realize, okay, if I'm making a deep playoff run, I need to, as a player, figure out how to be the healthiest. As a team, a coach, an organization, how do we make sure our guys are ready to go. And so SGA didn't have anything wrong with him, but they sat him. Steph had emotional and mental fatigue. Okay, great. For a guy making $50+ million a year, you think that he could still sleep well at night, even with all
Right.
that fatigue. But fans are still paying top dollar,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the point, is that you're going to get the games on TV. All of your good teams are going to sell out. Your star teams, or teams with star players, I guess is a better way to say it, if they're on the road and it's the only time you're going to see them, or one of only 2 times you're going to see them, fans want to see the Lakers in Denver. Obviously, they want to see Steph Curry in Milwaukee. They want to see Giannis in Phoenix and Kevin Durant in Florida, in Orlando or Miami or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, it is a lot of games, but I don't think it's too many, because we could go through and there's plenty of guys Anthony Davis, who's as fragile as they come. He played 76 games last year. Joker has played plenty of games. Guys play games. Russ has played a million games. So yeah, I understand the argument. I just don't think they're ever putting that toothpaste back in the tube anytime soon.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
we're too far from
with
it now.
expansion, you have the opportunity to maybe rework stuff. To okay, we're adding now 2 teams. It's going to kind of water down the league a little unintentionally. It just will, unless better players come along in the world. And we know that is happening. And I'm saying across the board. But we're going to see a team in Vegas and Seattle, and maybe it's the Dallas Mavericks or the Vegas something else, and there's a new Dallas Mavericks team with a new ownership. But I don't think they're making that change anytime soon. I think it's part of winning in the playoffs is making sure you're healthy, and that's navigating the regular season in any sport.
Right. A lot of things have to go right to win a championship, including healthy bodies, which is a little bit out of your control, but that's why it's got to be a priority to front offices to make sure that all the things are in place to ensure that you keep your team healthy. Now, of course, some of it is just the style of play that these players play with and the minutes that they've got, and that's why it was such bogus to me to hear people having any type of complaint or frustration about Jokic and Jamal not playing the other night. Anyone that actually watches this Nuggets team knows Jokic plays a lot, not just games, but also minutes. If we did the math on how many minutes he's played in 10 years, I think a lot of people would be pretty shocked. And he's missed very few games in those 10 years. So I think cutting him a little bit of slack and also it's very clear to me that there's a lot of people that did not watch the game where he fell on his elbow, because it was very obvious he was injured. It was not like all of a sudden out of nowhere against a contending team in a primetime spot, his elbow hurt. His elbow has been hurting. I believe that was against OKC, maybe in game 1. I think it was game 1
that was
against
Monday, it was in the win Monday.
Okay, yeah. So game 2 against OKC, and he was banged up pretty good. I mean, it was very clear watching that game that was going to be an injury that was lingering.
You know what? No, I apologize. Maybe
it was game 1, right?
Sunday. It was Sunday.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing of, hey, you can sit, and he said, hell no, kind of thing.
Right, right. We're going to. It sounds like BK has made it very clear. We are not doing less games in the league. We're not putting that toothpaste back in the tube.
In any sport, they're not doing it in baseball. You could argue easily go from 162 down to 154. Start the playoffs a little earlier, so we don't have to worry about games getting so cold that it affects the way they play it.
Right.
And all that. And we're not going to spend too much time on baseball. Football went from 16 to 17, and everyone senses 18 is coming in the NFL. And so the NBA and the NHL aren't playing less games.
Right.
You could make the argument, instead of shortening the schedule or taking games away, start the season earlier. Maybe you don't need as much training camp in the modern world where athletes are so conditioned. And I understand some can work their way out of shape pretty quickly in their off season. You could stretch the season, and instead of starting October 28th, 26th, 24th, you could start it October 10th. Yeah. And go a week later into the summer, and make sure you just have less back-to-backs. Because with less back-to-backs, you're just going to have a little less wear and tear. And it's tricky, too, because you have a handful of teams, including the one right here, that have a shared building. But, quick math, Dallas, New York, a basketball and hockey team in LA, Boston. There's at least Chicago.
Well, not to mention the Lakers and Clippers, who two teams that
Well, Clippers
are
have their brand new building
That's
finally.
right. Is that
Yeah,
finished yet?
Intuit. Oh yeah, it's awesome. I'm surprised you haven't. It's right next
No,
to
I
SoFi.
haven't.
It's sick. Yeah, Intuit Dome it's supposed to be awesome, but that's only one team. Nonetheless, there's at least 8 that I can think of that share a building. Not everybody has it set up the way they do in Florida, where the Panthers play a half hour away from or more from where the Heat play, and so that's part of it too. But you can adjust all of that. But yeah, lengthen the season by even a week each way, and you're going to cut out 3 or 4 back-to-backs potentially.
It's not a bad idea. BK, really quick before we get out of here, we won't spend too much time on this one. But before we get out of here, Nuggets after tonight dropped to 4th in the West, which again is very on pace with our conversations early in the season, which all alluded to the fact that the West is going to be exceptionally competitive. And any given week, I think from now until the end of the regular season, I think the Western Conference standings are going to look wildly different. Right now, you've got OKC at 1. Is Houston still 2? So you've got Houston at 2, I believe. And then you've got what used to be the Nuggets at 3. Now it's the Lakers. Then it's the Nuggets. And it seems to be pretty interchangeable. I think it's going to be interchangeable all season long. I think the Western Conference is going to be far more competitive than the Eastern Conference, which makes it both exciting and also terrifying, especially as Nuggets fans who can't really seem to figure out where their team stands right now. The pros, the cons, the injuries, the healthy bodies. It's very hard to keep up with. As it stands right now, BK, do you feel like this Nuggets team is still, it's hard to say because we don't have 2 of our best players right now, but do you still consider this Denver Nuggets team a contender?
Yes, and here's why. And it's funny because my guy Brian, who sometimes will come on our chats, I think his name on YouTube is Media Critic, but he's like, up another early exit, and I was like, well, and I'm gonna just share our direct messages because he said, this is my response to him. I wrote 8 messages back, but he said Nuggets have not won a playoff series against a team with more than 48 regular season victories under this regime. They've also not won a playoff series without a home court since '94. So I read that wrong because I got mad at him. But I'm like, in this regime, it doesn't really matter. And here's why. Because I get Joker and Malone have been there and Jamal have been there the whole time. But these are different teams. Christian Brown doesn't care what happened against Portland or the Suns. He was in college. And Aaron Gordon was in Orlando for a bunch of those years. And MPJ wasn't playing. And so I'm not saying that there aren't trends with coaches and organizations and all of that. But the Rockets, they haven't won anything.
Right.
And how many teams how many playoff series have OKC won against teams with 48 win? It doesn't matter because SGA wasn't there dominating. So you can't look at it like that. You have to look at what are you capable of doing when everyone's healthy, because that's how you have to look at it. And if you lose somebody for the year, then okay, how do we adjust and can we get over that hump? But the fact that Michael Malone has continued to point out how good their defense can be and how good it was last year, if you're worst in the league in the first half, that's obviously not good. But if you're 5th or 6th in the second half, that means you have the capacity to also be 5th or 6th in the first half, or 7th or 8th or 10th. And they still run
right?
One of the most efficient scoring offenses in the league, no matter who they're playing against. Now, they don't shoot as many threes as other teams, but in some respects, like we've pointed out. So that could maybe benefit them to some degree. I did give you that number, by the way, and I guess we should revisit that about the Nuggets and when they make threes, what the kind of lineup allocation is. And
so that's a great stat.
Credit my guy Danny Hyatt, who does all the stats for altitude. That when they make fewer than 12, they're 15 and 14. When they make 12 or more, they're 29-11. That's 72%, 72.5. They make 13, they're 22-8. That's 73%. They make 15 or more. I don't know if they just haven't hit 14, but when they make 15 or more, they're 15-5. So really that number at 12, that's 29-11. If they can make 12, and I know that they made 13 tonight, but they gave up 16, and we understand why they didn't win. This team is as equipped as any of the other teams to compete for a championship, but they have to want to play that way. And when you see people saying, oh, Malone's a defensive guy and he can't get them to play defense, he's lost the team. Maybe. And so if they
There
have an
could be
early
some
exit,
truth to that.
at some point things start to fall on deaf ears. And Bill Belichick isn't the coach in New England anymore. And we could go down the list of guys. Phil Jackson, we know why he left there, but then he left the Bulls, Lakers. Pat Riley didn't coach the Knicks forever. I understand when he went to the point being, no one coaches for life. And so if they have especially if they had a first round exit, then I think everything's on the table for Calvin Booth or Michael Malone, not because Josh and Stan Kroenke don't appreciate what they've done. I just think that it's worth exploring. It's like, why can't you get these guys where you can get them? Do they just need a new voice? But as it stands right now, in 3 weeks when the playoffs start, or whatever, I guess a month when the playoffs start on April 19th, if they're healthy, they're going to be one of the favorites. I don't care what their seed is. Do they want to avoid OKC until they have to play them? Sure, but you're going to have to beat them at some point anyway. So,
Right. Can't
I mean,
run
I'll throw
from
it
them
back to you.
forever, sadly.
Before we get out of here, do you think, well, it says Mike Malone's not that old. No, he's 53. It's not about him being old. It's just about it. Yeah, I'm not saying the game's passed him by. I'm saying at some point your message just doesn't get through to your guys. Mike Shanahan got fired here in Denver. So that's sort of the point. But you watch the league as closely as anyone. I know your Nuggets fanship. We know your Nuggets fanship. But do you think that this team just can't do it, or they're not doing it?
Not doing it. Not doing it. And at the end of the day, I think what we're seeing with this Nuggets team, and I've been saying this for weeks now, and what's hard about me saying it is I don't really have anything to back it. I have no physical evidence. I have no proof in my phone, receipts as we call them these days. I don't have that. But what I will tell you is it does feel like there is a large disconnect in the locker room. And you can chalk some of that up to the fact that the starting five has looked different every night and there have been injuries. You could chalk it up to the fact that maybe Coach Mike Malone was giving special treatment to Jamal early in the season and it didn't sit well with other guys. Maybe it's this. What I think it is right now is there is a lot of uncertainty in roles on this team right now. You had Jamal out for a little bit, so then you had Russ facilitating the offense, and then you've got Jokic who can kind of do a little bit of everything, and he's really great at facilitating the offense, but you really want him to be focused on being that offensive leader. And then you've got Jamal who definitely had a rough spot there in the beginning of the season, found his rhythm. You've had MPJ who's had really high highs and really low lows. You've got CB who brings the energy, Peyton Watson in the same way, but they're still young. They're still learning. I just think it almost feels like this Nuggets team, in so many ways, each of them in their own way, are kind of on pins and needles. I think they lack confidence this season, and I don't know exactly where that's coming from. I have to assume and think that some of that has to do with the relationship between the locker room and the coaches. I'm not explicitly calling out Coach Malone, but I am saying that I do think there is a lack of confidence on this team where there's just a lot of uncertainty. And you watch this across any major sport really, where, let's just use an example with quarterbacks. If there's a quarterback room with lots of talented quarterbacks and you get an opportunity to play and you don't rise to the occasion, and some of that has to do with the nerves and feeling like you're constantly in tryout mode. You're constantly auditioning for your spot on the team. And I think there's been a lot of players on this Nuggets team that know what they personally bring to the table. They know their talent and their skill set, but they're kind of walking on eggshells, wondering, is it going to be my turn today? Is it not? Am I going to be that guy? Am I going to save the day? And I think that's hard when you've got so much talent on one roster. I mean, I could name being the best passing team in the NBA means there's a lot of guys that can step up and be leaders and facilitate an offense. And so it's not that I want to call them ball hogs by any means, but I do feel like you've got a lot of guys on the team that know what they can do with the ball in their hands. And you've got this internal competition, which I do believe is healthy in so many ways, but you've got this internal competition plus that lack of security. I don't know. To me, there's an overwhelming insecurity problem on the Denver Nuggets. And that's a word that I know especially men do not like to be called. So I'm not trying to call a large group of men that I respect very much a bunch of insecure people, but that feels like the theme this season is it just feels like we're playing insecure basketball, meaning I don't know what my role is. MPJ, great example. He had all those trade rumors flying around his head. And it felt like in that time when he's trying to prove I want to be here and I matter on this team, he was playing great. And then he gets a little complacent when the trade rumors die down and the trade deadline has passed. So again, it just feels like it's overall there's an insecurity problem because there's a significant lack of confidence in this team and what they're capable of. And they've still got it in there so they can turn it on whenever they truly need to. But that to me is the issue. So yeah, I would say I still believe that they can do anything that they want to do. They're just not doing it. But I think that a lot of that has to do with the chemistry and the culture in the locker room right now. And it just does feel like there's some weird insecurities happening on this team.
So a couple final thoughts. I did find the stat, and I don't know why I started doing the math myself when I realized in a AI Google search world, and thanks to something called StatMuse, I was able to figure it out. So I'll give you this first before I just give you thoughts on what this team needs to do and what you should be looking at as indicators of whether or not they'll be able to reach their potential, whatever that ends up truly being. But I still think it's winning the West and competing for a title. So Michael Malone missed his stat by one game, at least assuming this is right. And the number I looked up was 737. And then I saw with Joker again, 7. So I saw it under his stats page and then under StatMuse. So he didn't play tonight, didn't play the other day. Joker's played 737. That's actually tied for third with Tobias Harris, even though some reason he's listed as fourth. I don't know if Tobias played tonight or not. Harrison Barnes, believe it or not, who I can't believe is still in the league, but he is. Harrison Barnes has played 738 games. And the player who's played 739 games, former Denver Nugget, current Orlando Magic,
KCP?
He has played 739
I love
games.
it.
Because I was doing the math on what happened in those COVID years, what were the actual total numbers between bubble and everything else. And it was 72 in 1920 and 75 the next year. Anyway, but yeah, so Joker's right there. The fact that anyone's had to even try to defend Joker not playing and all of that based on what Tim Bontemp said the other night was obviously silly. If we want to react to Bruce's question before I share my other thoughts, I'll let you go first since you're the both biggest Jamal critic, but also his biggest fan when he plays the way he's supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I right now, as of late, I've been happy with what Jamal has been bringing because even if he's not blowing me out of the water with his stat line, I can physically see an effort there, and that's literally all I've cared about. I have never once gotten on one of these post-game live shows and insinuated that unless he scores 30 plus, I'm going to be ticked off. Now, do I think when you're making max contract money the way that he is, that kind of is the expectation, or at least the bare minimum should be significantly higher than what we saw at the beginning of the season? Absolutely. But for me, my issue with Jamal was always a lack of effort. I could just very clearly see that there was not that same hustle and energy. So do I think it's past the point of holding him accountable? Yes. I think if you were going to hold him accountable, it should have happened earlier in the season. And I do think there could have been some issues with the chemistry and the culture in the way that Jamal Murray was not being held to the same standard of effort that everybody else may have been. I'm not saying that he hasn't earned the right to, have maybe harsher punishments or not get yelled at as frequently, because I do think once you are under the same coach for a certain amount of years, you probably build a relationship in which Coach Malone knows what he can and can't say to Jamal. But I do think you kind of have to keep it pretty even when you've got so many young guys that are looking to guys like Jamal for not only inspiration, but also like motivation. And Jamal really wasn't bringing that. So I don't think that the accountability thing is something that's a now issue. What I do think is a now issue as it pertains to Jamal Murray is that maybe his teammates kind of huff and puff looking at him now giving effort, going, where has this been all season long when we were struggling? And they could be more comfortably sitting in the number 2 seed right now. Who knows?
Maybe. I don't think that pros look at it like that. I think they kind of live game to game. And I'm not saying they're not looking at the standings I think they're worrying about, okay, tonight, did we get this from, or, in chunks, we're on this road trip and so-and-so's not doing well enough, or we've been home for this many games. And I'm not even saying Jamal, I'm saying across the board. I think that's what you end up getting from pros, especially in a sport like baseball, like hockey,
Right.
like basketball, where there's so many games. Football's a little different because of just the way every game matters week over week. So I think that's fans that look back to what he was doing. If and coaches too. That's why Michael Malone's quick to say, hey, 16 assists, 1 turnover the last 2 games when he said that a couple weeks
But I
ago.
will say, to play devil's advocate though, BK, if Jamal has now stepped into being a vocal leader and is now telling people what they need to fix, I'm not sure I get these are pros, but they're also still human beings. I don't like being told what I should or shouldn't do by somebody who for a very long stretch of time was not doing it themselves. So if that is happening, now Jamal's like got this rejuvenated vibe about him and he's like, "Okay, I'm hungry. Let's go. Let's win." And everyone's sitting there going, "Dude, like thanks for showing up. Like hello." So
Yeah.
if that is happening, that could create a little bit of hostility in the locker room.
Yeah, I don't know if it is though. And
Again, these are assumptions, everyone. We don't have
yeah,
facts on this. We're
because
just having dialogue.
Joker's a tone setter. AG's kind of got that, and he's not quiet around the team. He's just kind of quiet when we're in there, but there's a silent leadership quality to him. But he and Jamal are often the ringleaders of whatever
Yeah.
they're doing as a team. And maybe they're not as close as they've been in the past. I'm not saying they're not close, but they may not be as close as they were when Bruce Brown and KCP and Jeff Green were there. And not because it's a slam on anyone else or critical, but it's hard to get that in any sport. And so whether it's about the consistency, I understand that, but you can only roll with who you have. The questions about MPJ's inconsistency are probably what needs to be the biggest concern or the loudest. And there's 2 ways to go about it. You can play him and hope that he gives you the best version of himself more than not, or you just don't play him as much, which is something I don't think Michael Malone will have a problem with in the playoffs when you've got all these other options now to at least get minutes
That
from.
have proven themselves.
You'll
Yeah.
play Peyton Watson. You'll play a small ball lineup with CB playing the 3 once AG's healthy. But what you need to keep an eye on, I think, over the next couple of weeks is if Aaron Gordon can go where the only games he's missing is because of rest, not because of a calf. But if you get of the now, 13 games left, if you get 10 from Aaron Gordon, and in those 10, Jamal and Joker are playing a good chunk, and you're getting what you think is going to be your healthy playoff roster, they just haven't had Aaron Gordon consistently. And I think that he's such a tone setter on both sides of the ball, and he makes Joker's life easier defensively and at times offensively, certainly with the way he's shooting the 3, but what he's been able to do operating on the baseline in the dunker spot, as they call it, and getting easy buckets from Joker for so long. If he can return to that form, then you've got to feel pretty good about it as far as where they're at. And MPJ will be the biggest wild card because Jamal is going to be playoff Jamal. All signs are indicating that that's what he's working up towards. And so if he gets there, I don't think anyone's going to spend much time thinking about where was this in October, where was this in November, where was it in December, except for the fact that
for sure.
But if they do finish 4th or 5th or 7th, I guess 4th or 5th or 7th, 6th or 7th, you're still, but I was thinking 7th, 4th or 5th or 8th, and I don't think but then you're in the play-in and it gets wonky. But if they finish 4th or 5th and have to play OKC in the second round, you can be mad at Jamal for some dumb losses, for the loss in Washington and not being there consistently. But I don't think they're going to look back that far as much as they now have, and keep trying to do this math and make sure it's right. 13 games left, still 11 against playoff teams. Because the only non-playoff team now, it'll be one less when they play Portland, who we know isn't a playoff team on Friday. But then it's back to a bunch of playoff teams again until they see the Jazz at the very end of the year. And so maybe that's a better way to look at it. Is after this game, it's all playoff teams or playoff eligible teams. We talk about the Bulls or the Jazz to kind of finish it off. And that game may really matter, not to the Jazz. So that certainly could matter in their positioning. But they're going to see Houston a couple of times. They're going to see Memphis, and they're going to have a chance to kind of still control their own destiny. They just need to get right. So the person that says, should Joker sit the whole week? Well, I do think he should sit Friday at this point, but I would play him Sunday against Houston because he hadn't played against the Rockets yet.
And Houston, we know what Houston's bringing to the table right now. We'll get
8
to this
straight
question.
wins.
Yeah, they're on fire. We'll get to this question as our last question here, BK, and then we'll get out of here. Liv/BK, what happens if we repeat like last year? I do think there's a potential that Coach Malone is in the hot seat a little bit. I do. Whether we think that's fair or not, I do think that if we have a repeat like we did, 7-game series, they're losing at home, they just kind of throw it down the drain, and it's pretty apparent that there's just a total lack of effort and care. I do think the front office is going to have to look at that and just figure out, is this dynamic? And it's not to say Coach Malone is a bad coach, but is this dynamic between Coach Malone and the team that we have going to work? And so I do think there will be a little bit of reflection in that regard. Again, it's hard to say because we don't know what the playoffs are going to bring. It's a really tough situation to be a coach like Coach Malone right now, who did 2 years ago just win you a championship. If they win another one, guess what? Coach Malone's job is safe for another 2-3 seasons. So it's a very tough thing, and the coaching turnover rate is very difficult to sometimes understand. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but I do think there will be some deeper conversations about whether or not Coach Malone works in Denver, not whether or not he's a good coach. We know he is. It's whether or not he works with this team. So that's my perspective on it. But of course, it's one of those wait and see situations.
Yeah, I think without really looking at it, the coach who's kept his job the longest has to be Eric Spoelstra in Miami, and then Steve Kerr has certainly been in his same role for a long time. If I'm Pop, but
I was going to say Pop.
but
Pop is definitely number one, but
a different deal, and we hope that Pop's getting healthy and we see him back on the sidelines. But we may never see him beyond that. Pop is in a different category than the rest of them,
for sure,
including Steve Kerr, who has 4 rings. But it's still, Pop's going to leave when he's ready to leave, or if his health forces him. Steve Kerr, in theory, could get fired before Pop's getting fired.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, again, only time will tell. And, if this Denver Nuggets team, given the record that they have and the talent that they have, if they're a first-round exit, I do think Coach Malone is probably going to have to be in the front office having some pretty serious conversations. And at the end of the day, the NBA is a business for not just the players and the front offices, but also for the coaches as well. So if the Nuggets feel like, hey, this relationship between Coach Malone and the team is not going to work much longer, I think it will be very telling in the playoffs whether or not Coach Malone is here to stay for the long haul or his time is slowly coming to an end. So all that to say, we will have off court tomorrow for you, 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time. BK, when's the next?
I'll be at the March Madness games.
That's right. BK will be at the March Madness games here in Denver. So we'll have some content and coverage coming to you live from those games. March is here, which means the madness is here. I will actually be on an airplane
I gotta
headed.
get my brackets filled out.
I know. I haven't even. I can't even
till
think
10
about
a.m.
it.
We got to get it going.
I can't believe it's March, so I'm like already kind of all over the place. But I will actually also be on. I will be at March Madness games, but I will be on an airplane to get to mine. So March Madness coverage, some basketball coverage coming to you guys this weekend, and we appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. I know it's a late night, so we'll let you get out of here, and hopefully things are turning around for the Denver Nuggets. We get the players back in full health, but of course, resting their bodies, especially right now, is the most important. So thank you guys for tuning in to another Guerrilla Sports Off Court, a post-game live reaction presented by Trusted American Mortgage. You can head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save some money, getting you a better interest rate, lowering your monthly payments. Shout out to our friends at Trusted American. BK, thank you for joining. And we will see you guys very, very soon. Have a wonderful night, and make sure you tune into tomorrow's Off Court episode for a deeper dive into the Denver Nuggets as well as across the NBA. See ya.